Thank you. Thank you so much for being here. And let me make it clear that you are here for a purpose. Each one of you decided on another level, somewhere else, to become a part of the synergy in this room. I say that because I'm a master at understanding synergy in a room. If I didn't understand what the nuance of a tilted head or a slight smile that changes, what that means for what was about to happen in the room, I could not capture it, could I? As a courtroom artist, that was my job, to capture all the energy of probably horrific, if not infamous, events that have occurred in our nation. Please forgive me for looking at my notes, but it helps me. I've got so much to say and I know we have little time. So I want to thank you again for becoming part of the energy in this room, because I expect to receive something from you in return. Okay? Reflection being the theme was given by the Oklahoma City chapter, and that tells me that already synchronicity has begun. They are part of the synergy this morning with you. Okay? I say that because it's so important for me to understand that the Oklahoma City bomb trial was very, very, it was a big piece of my career of the last 40 years. I spent 2 years sketching those trials, and my little sister survived the bomb. My family is from Oklahoma City. So synchronicity has begun. Okay, so let's talk about the reflection theme. What is it for you? What does it mean? Well, what I know for me, if I were in a courtroom and I had to take in everything that was in that room, I had to be very careful about what I saw as the story for that day, for that trial. I was so impacted by many of the forensic witnesses and all the evidence that they had, but I had to pare it down so I could tell the true story in just 13 seconds on the air that evening for you. Okay? So we can start with these are two of my peers. The woman on the far left is Sarah Duke from the Library of Congress. In 2017, we were given a special exhibit, and all of our work, we each gave a portfolio of work to the Library of Congress to be archived as a piece of U.S. trial history. I was very honored to be there. And yes, that's me on the end, not looking at the camera as usual. Okay. And I was so honored to have met Sonia Sotomayor there. She came to see the exhibit and to speak. And I was honored to draw her or sketch her as she was speaking. The library wanted to give her one of my drawings as a remembrance of the event. However, she's so appropriate, she wouldn't accept it. So it's also on file at the library right now. Let's get back on track now. So like I said, as a courtroom artist, it was important for me to understand that not only the synergy in the room, but the creative energy. What brought the images to me was when I knew the energy over here was changing. So I'd watched, and I would always, as I said, I was in the courtroom to try to draw the energy in the room. I would have a plan drawing in front of me, but if something happened over here, someone screamed from the family, or there was a nuance I saw in a defendant's face and knew that he was going to have an outburst, I had to have a piece of paper right next to me so I could pull it and draw it really quickly, or I wouldn't have a job if I didn't capture that, right? So anyway, the nuance of how the synergy changes even in the bodies of the people in the room. Like all of you, you have a place here now, and you're seated in a comfortable space, hopefully. But hopefully, it'll all change a little bit when I get further into the conversation, and I'll talk about that in a little bit. Okay, so, like I said, I was honored in 2017, and Sonia Sotomayor and I were discussing my drawings. She actually looked at my work, and we chatted about it. It was wonderful. One of the first drawings we chatted about was a drawing I did for the Oklahoma City bombing. As I said, that morning, I received a phone call from CNN, and they said, get to the airport now. And I said, the airport's closed in Oklahoma City. They said, I wasn't in Oklahoma City, I was in Dallas. They said, get to the air park in Dallas. We're flying you to Oklahoma City on a private jet. You need to be there in 20 minutes. So I got in the jet. We flew in. I was with Tony Clark. He was a longtime reporter for CNN. As we drove into downtown Oklahoma City, we were escorted by 2 National Guard Jeeps. There was not a sound except for the tires crushing the glass that had fallen from the buildings above. And I knew my little sister was in the building catty corner from the Murrah Federal Building. She worked in a bank. I didn't know if she was alive. The floors in that building had fallen. As we moved further into the city, CNN had located an RV. I don't know how. They situated it right on the edge of the building, and that's where I waited for the rest of the day, not knowing if my sister was alive or dead. And I had to be available to sketch anyone they thought would be a witness, or maybe even they could have someone that would be accused of having a part of that. So that's why I was there. And it was very difficult. In fact, I didn't find out my sister had survived until later that evening. So here's one of the first drawings that I wanted you to see. This rarely happens, both defendants, Tim McVeigh and Terry Nichols, in the same courtroom. But because one of the federal courtrooms was bombed in Oklahoma City, this hearing happened in Oklahoma City, they didn't have any place to put them, and they had limited security in that small space. So that's why they were together for the first hearing, in which their trials were separated. It was interesting because during that hearing, Nichols' attorney is standing next to a video of the children and the people coming out of the bomb site. And Tim McVeigh, this was the only time I saw him show or exhibit any kind of emotion. When they showed a little baby being brought out with the fireman, you remember that image, the fireman carrying the dead baby? He leaned forward, and of course the next image was a little girl with the bandage. He leaned forward, and you could see I put some blush in his face, on his ears and his cheeks. The only time he showed any kind of emotion. I thought it important for me to show you that. Okay. The next trial. Shannon Faulkner, the girl in the middle, you can see there's guys behind her, in front of her, and you can see the drill sergeant screaming at her. She worked hard she had a trial, in fact, to join the military academy of the Citadel, long known as a male military ever since the Civil War, and she got in. We struggled at this trial because they were so emotional about this whole event, and she was emotional too. And it was a hard trial for me because I knew, man, if she gets in, it's not going to be pretty, and it wasn't. She stayed less than a year and had to get out because of the emotional abuse. However, because of her actions today, women graduate from that academy as officers. This is an interesting case too, the Jasper dragging death. That's the back of a pickup truck that 3 white young men used to drag an elder black man to his death in Jasper, Texas. When I first went to Jasper, Texas, it was with our satellite truck driver. He and I were good friends. We covered many trials for CNN. I drove in the truck with him because I flew in to Texas, or to that little town, and he picked me up with a satellite truck, so we had no other vehicle. We drove into the downtown area to get a permit to park the vehicle. He and I got out of the vehicle, went into the courthouse to get our permit. When we came back, he noticed that there was a pink note on the front window of the truck. He read it to me, and it threatened his life because he was with me. After that, I understood where we were, and that still exists today. This is an image of one of the boys. You can see the pictures of his hate tattoos on his, John William King is his name, on his body, all over his body. And I wanted to make sure that I illustrated that because you could see it no other way. It was court evidence. So I sat there during lunch and captured every bit that I could. There's a prosecutor standing looking at it. I'm sorry, it's so emotional because I didn't realize I'd have the same feeling I had at the moment when I was sitting in the trial. And I had to learn how to maintain. So I'm trying to do that now. Thank you. But you can see this was very, very prolific. This particular drawing went out all over the United States and possibly the world. The Times picked it up, all kinds of periodicals. It was very interesting. I had a lot of feedback on this. And going from that, of course, we go to, let's see, where are we? Matthew Shepard?
No, Cartel.
Oh, Cartel, right. Mexican drug lord, I'm sorry. I had oftentimes, why is it not working? Oh, there we go. Oftentimes, I'm called at the last minute to go to a federal court building to do some kind of hearing of some big notable guy. This guy, nobody knew what he looked like. Nobody knew who he was, really, until he was arrested. This man was a Mexican, leader of a Mexican drug cartel. He's the one on the far right with the earphones. He couldn't understand English, so they had that for him to understand. Now, his attorney is constantly looking at me, as you can see, and I knew that. Because this man told his attorney he did not want his image on the air. Well, guess what? This is the United States, and I will draw you if I want to. So that's what happened. Because of that, though, my life was threatened, and I had to be escorted to and from the courtroom every day. And as a matter of fact, the federal judge allowed me to park my car in the federal parking spots inside the building in order to keep me safe. Everyone knows Kobe. This man had a hearing one time. He was accused of rape in Aspen, Colorado. Hearing lasted about a week, and the girl ended up dropping the charges. But at the time, it was really, really heavily published, and reporters were from all over the world because of who he was. I counted 45 satellite trucks in the parking lot of the courtroom. And I thought that was fascinating because I was the only artist there. Every day during about 10:30 in the morning, we'd have a break, and I'd take that time to go out into the hallway because the judge wouldn't let me make noise in the courtroom. And I'd sketch as fast as I could. We had a runner from all the satellite trucks waiting at the door for my drawing so they could take it out, and 45 cameras would shoot, or maybe 100 cameras, I don't know, there were a lot there. So I'd go out every day during the break and sit outside the courtroom doors and draw. And every day at the same time, as I was drawing, I'd see the most beautiful pair of Italian shoes step up next to me. And he would say, "Good morning, Mrs." And we'd chat a little bit about the drawing. He was very complimentary, but he wouldn't sign one of my drawings. He said he couldn't. His signature was no longer his. Anyone here know what that means? Yeah, when you become very famous, you can't do that unless you have, I think like him, unless you have a lawyer help you to understand what that means. So he was very kind. I had to do this drawing and take it out to the cameras that day, and it was interesting because he thanked me for getting an image that he thought was, good. So I wanted to include that. Yeah, 3 young men that did this to an elderly black man. They did this outside of town on a dirt road and drug him almost 2 miles until he hit the culvert of an entrance to a little cemetery, a black cemetery as it would be, and it severed his head from his body. I knew this after we pulled into Jasper and I heard the story, and then I had the incident with my driver. So we went to the cemetery. He drove me out, but I walked down to the little black cemetery. You couldn't believe it. Every tombstone, every headstone was a piece of art made from homemade found objects. For instance, I saw a green metal kitchen table with the metal legs, folded up. Remember those? People with white hair, do you remember those? Little metal kitchen tables. Anyway, folded and words of peace written on it. Then I saw an old ironing board, a wooden ironing board, standing, and just at the top somebody had burned into it rest. I was so taken by this moment, understanding where I was and what had happened there. It was just phenomenal. That influenced my work in the courtroom. And what I didn't say earlier is that I often would go to the crime scenes before the trial started because I got so much from the energy in that space that it helped me in court to find or ferret out the truth, to find what I needed to draw. Does that make any sense? So these three boys had three different trials. The first trial, of course, that young man there, he didn't really want to proceed after a couple of days, so he ended up pleading. But during the trial, it was so published and so publicized that Dan Rather, of course, at that time I had contracted with CBS, he brought his entire team. We had cameras all over the front lawn, and people were coming from everywhere to watch. And the 5 o'clock news had started, so the entire courtroom emptied. And I was still there sketching, doing my work. No one knew what was coming next in terms of evidence. When the sheriffs brought out the actual chain that they had chained Mr. Bird with to drag him, I was the only one there, and they drew it. It's a powerful moment. Today, I am a therapist, a behavioral health therapist, an art therapist, may I say, with the Jemez tribe in New Mexico. I think I became an art therapist because of my own trauma, having received so many images and repeating. And remember, when I'm in the courtroom, if I see an image of a child dead, bloody, or I see an image of someone who's in a murder scene, I have to translate that. I have to clean it up. I have to make it palatable for you at home because it's on usually at night during dinner time. And I usually get only 13 seconds in which to do this work, do this story, because it only stays up to 13 seconds for you to see it. So it's very, very hard to come up with the visual, especially in my style. I'm one of the very few people who do realism. Lots of courtroom sketches are very quick and fast. But the realistic piece, I thought, you need that. Everyone needs to see and recognize who it is that did these crimes, who it is that we're talking about. So that's why I think I was called to be the only one during the trial for Kobe, or several trials since then. I've done so many. You can imagine 4 decades. I can't even tell you how many trials. I need to count them up sometime. But I wanted to release some of that, and trial art is now kind of a dying genre. Right now, when they have a famous trial, they usually get the cameras in the courtroom. And they're even working on getting cameras in court at federal court, which breaks my heart, because that was my mainstay. But they still call me at times. The last thing I did was the Fort Hood shooter, I think, a couple of years ago. But they'll call me if there's something big. My niche was the Heartland. And we had Maryland Church on the East Coast for DC, and then we had Bill Robles in California. So they call us according to where we are and how easy it is to get to us. I'm trying to think of, there's so much in my head. I got so many stories. But the important thing about all of this is for you to know that when there is a specific or a terrible historical crime that has implications for our community or our society, it becomes a very notable and highly publicized event. Why? I don't know. Unless it is because we need to know how to heal from this. And that's what I took on as an artist. I wanted to make not only a drawing that would tell you the story, but something that would be not offensive to look at. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. So that you could see the story and understand how this story is going to impact you or your community, because it certainly impacted me. If I could talk once again about the Oklahoma City bombing and the reflection theme, that Oklahoma City chose that theme, and it was long before I knew. Tracy told me about it after I was here yesterday. I didn't know. But I can tell you that that theme is so critically important to me. Like I said, my little sister survived the bombing. She normally that day, she didn't, but normally she parked her car in the parking lot of the federal building that was blown up because it was free parking, and she was a mama and couldn't afford the parking in their building that day. As synchronicity or luck or whatever you call it would have it, she parked in the bank building below, and she was in the basement when the bomb went off. So I truly believe in the synergy of a moment like this room here. Everyone in this room is here to receive something, like I said. Whether it's understanding that we are so gifted in our normal lives, not being affected by such outrageous crime and events. But if you are, please know that the group around you holds a synergy that can help heal you. And that's what I tried to do with my courtroom art, to create something that was beautiful to look at, even though it told a horrific, sad story. Okay? That's why I became a therapist. I wanted to learn how to give back in another way, how to give healing or help heal, instead of drawing the horrendous damage and trauma that we all know happened in the last 40 years, with all the trials that you see on television. I'm so lucky and proud and happy to be honored to be with them. And if you're visiting Santa Fe for the first time, please take time to go to one of the pueblos and look at their story. There's something there. Well, I hope you've received something. I don't know how long this is supposed to be or whatever. Okay. I hope you've received something from me today, and I'll be happy to answer your questions. Do we do that now? Or
Yeah, let's do
okay.
that now.
If you have any questions or thoughts about anything that I've said or any trial that I've covered, yes?
I'm really curious about the logistics of the speed of the drawing, because I know that things must be, moving quickly in the trial. Would you do like a quick sketch to get down what's going on in the moment, and then go back and fill in, the details and the colors later? Just the logistics of how this happens.
I had to develop a radar of sorts, just like right now my radar is on. I had to understand what the synergy in the room felt like when the people come in, they sit. And I'm not talking just about the courtroom, but about what's behind the wall too, the attorneys and the defendants and the witnesses. And if something changes in that energy, then I knew something would change in the physicality and the physical bodies of these people, right? I know that the synergy in this room is very calm and peaceful, and you're all looking at me like, okay, give me something, give me something. But in the courtroom, I could feel that. If something was going to happen over here, an outburst, or something would happen over here that I needed to get, I could feel it and draw it. So, and in answer to your question, I had to sketch it and complete it right then. I gave myself usually up to 20 minutes to get something really completed. Like the Kobe drawing, it looks very, very finished and, really, really realistic. But it took me almost 15, 20 years to get to that place. And that is something that not many courtroom artists can do. They do the sketchy thing, and they get good likenesses, but it was my goal to create an image for you that felt like it was going to breathe, because I wanted you to get into the story and stay with the picture. Does that make any sense? Thank you for that question. Yes?
In Oklahoma City, when CNN brought you to the site and when they had you staged in that RV, was that unusual to be asked to sketch not in the courtroom, but...
Yes. Yes. If ever, and that has happened to me more than once. They know my style. Everyone has a different style. But if the person has done something really, really big that they know the whole world would want to know about, they want to see that face and recognize it. If the person is like I did the Martina Navratilova trial, she was a tennis player, anyone remember that? And she was doing a divorce settlement or something, anyway. I was doing the trial and was able to get her likeness quite well, and I was asked to do that because I can get a good likeness. And by the way, she's a very kind person too. I'd gone to the bathroom and she was in there complimenting my drawings. Any other questions? Yes?
I presume you were at some trials where the defendant was found innocent. And if so, did the verdict coincide with your own personal thoughts? I mean, I know that from what I've seen there, you were as objective as anyone could be, but let's be right down, drill to the core. You had your own personal thoughts.
Yes, I did, but here's what I know. Because I had gone through the entire trial, and if it was a trial from a horrific crime, like Andrea Yates, the mother who drowned 5 children in a bathtub, she was psychotic at the time. She was on meds that she should not have been on. And the first trial ended in her having, life in prison. Well, that wasn't right. She was psychotic. They gave her a second trial. Now she's appropriately in a mental hospital. That was the only one that I can say that I really carried with me. The rest of them, I've learned to shut down, keep out. There's no place in my life, my family, my body for that. But thank you for that question. Yes?
Kind of piggyback on your answer there, with sketching, it kind of sketches into your mind or into your memory versus photo or video. Sometimes you can just export it and it's out of your mind. But here you are sketching. How do you find that self-care? How do you block it out of your mind? Or is there a ritual that you do leaving the courtroom or being at home alone? What's your self-care?
Art. And may I tell you each, as a therapist now, I'm going to be an art therapist for a moment. If you just get an adult coloring book of any interest, something that interests you, I swear it works. You spend at least 20 minutes after you've had a hard day or something happened that really sets in your head and your body that you don't want to keep there, sit down and color. Color. I mean, get some Crayolas, or colored pencils are easier for adults. But yeah, coloring is perfect. And so I would always do art, or have a piece ready in my studio that I'd go back to. That's the best therapy. Anyone who's an artist here? Yay! You know this. Any other questions? Yeah.
Hi, I'm Francine Figueroa. I don't have a question, but I want to testify, almost as if I'm in church, because I feel, so a friend of mine a few months ago said, hey, there's this CreativeMornings situation going on in town, you got to get there, She's not here all the time, she's not in Cali. And I was flipping through the reporter, and I saw that it was today. And so I got over here. I didn't read your bio. I saw your face. I didn't read your bio. I had no idea. I was like, is this Pachakacha? Like, what's going on?
Was she going to do Zumba?
What's happening? So here I am. So I'm a therapist. I'm a holistic therapist. And I was I just got out to Santa Fe. And so, and I've done a lot of work with women with trauma. So what you're talking about to me is like is so synergetic.
Yes.
Here I am. It's just to testify that, the energy, it's here. And I'm grateful for you and for what you do and what you hold for us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
See, I've received something. Yes.
I'm afraid I have 3 questions.
Yes.
So one, why do we have courtroom artists instead of photographers? Because it seems like, your artwork is beautiful. My mother did portraits in oil, and I really appreciate a good portrait. So kudos to that. And where did you study? Art is another question. And then also, do you draw yourself in your own? There's sort of an unwritten joke that portrait artists always sort of subtly draw themselves into their portraits.
No, I don't.
If I may,
Yeah.
in the interest of time.
Oh, okay. You don't have to.
I was going to do this anyway, but I'm going to recommend that you and anyone else listen to the 99% Invisible podcast on courtroom sketch. It goes through the history of why this exists in the first place in history, and I think in the interest of time, it's probably the best resource for that. But I'll let you speak to the other, especially how you got into this.
I got into it because 2 weeks after I graduated from college, and I'll say it, I graduated in 1977. 2 weeks after, I was at my mother's house, and they had these big console TV sets, with these giant screens, and I saw these beautiful drawings pop up on the CBS News. And even though they were black and white, I was awestruck. The drawings had so much energy and character and creation, yet I could see the people and what they were doing and how their movements were affecting the story. I waited for the name to come up, and it was Howard Brody. He is an icon in my field. He's gone now. But his son was at the Library of Congress when I was inducted into the hall, and I just wanted to cry, because that man gave me something. At the time I saw the picture, I went to my mom's kitchen phone. Yeah, remember those? And I called Channel 9 in Oklahoma City and said, my name is Pat, and I'm an artist, and as God would have it, the man on the other end was Ed Turner, not Ted Turner, but Ed Turner was another big guy at CNN. He happened to be in Oklahoma City as a temporary news director for that station. And he says, "Can you draw people?" And I said, "Yes, sir. Yes, sir, I can. Get the hell down here." So I took off, and he had me draw on a yellow notepad the noon news anchor behind the studio camera as he was giving the news. He wanted me to draw this guy while he was working. Then I handed the drawing back to him, and he looked at it for the longest time and looked at me and said, "And you fucking walked in off the street." That's how it began.